exactly. So I'm 5 episodes in. I'm still not comfortable with it and still don't fully understand what I'm doing. So this is the ideal episode where I can pick your brains.
Fantastic.
And I'm sure it's going to be useful to everyone listening as well, who's either in the early stages of a podcast, would like to refresh their podcast, or is just interested in podcasting. So I guess as a way of introduction, what do you do?
So I help people share their voice and their message with the world. And I believe that podcasting is the perfect vehicle for it, because it is easier to fight for ears than eyes. If you look at just YouTube to podcasting, there are currently, as of right now when the show goes out, 5 million channels on YouTube. The chances of being found are incredibly low. That's even with discoverability on the algorithms of both Google and YouTube. But in the podcast world, as of this morning, it was 750,000, which is a massive growth, because last year it was 500,000.
Wow.
But being one of 750,000 is still far greater than one of 5 million. That's before we're talking about production and multi-angles and psychology and multiple settings and et cetera, of the different mediums. But I just think if you want to get your voice and message to the world, podcasting is the vehicle to do it. And what my business does, a podcast company, is help you do that. We say, what's going to be the first problem you're going to have? And you're probably going to say, well, I don't know how to tell a good story. So we're storytellers, so let's remind you. We have a course on a podcast company that takes you through that whole process of becoming a great storyteller. Then all of a sudden, the course totally changes and says, you're probably thinking your second biggest issue is tech. Well, Brett Farmer, who's my business partner based in the US, he's now going to talk you through tech. And then we end with, you're probably thinking, how do I do this if I've got no money? Because I want this to work. I also need some money to come back for my time. It's time away from my family. It's time away from my business, where it should be supporting your business, and it should be a key component in your marketing. And then we go into monetization. We go into how do you make money through your podcast? And then when that's done, we kind of end with this cheeky thing saying, listen, if you just want to focus on storytelling and making money, we'll take over your tech. We have a tech part. We'll do all the production. We'll take out all the ums, ahs, buts, barking dog, fire alarms, sirens, all the madness. So it just sounds beautiful from start to finish. And guess what we'll also do, if you're worried about traffic, is we have an exclusive community to all our clients where we'll help promote your show. We'll get you on other shows. We'll get other shows to talk about you. And that's our sort of exclusive community out of the group. So we believe that by doing that, we take care of all those dominoes that might be stopping you from starting a podcast.
Right, so it really is the A to Z. I'm going to tell you, this is funny because you've been sort of coaching me through this.
Yes.
And now I feel like I'm going to be honest with you about all my worries about it.
Please.
All my issues. And then hopefully it will help you.
It'll help, it'll help the listener, because they'll probably have the same worries and issues that you have.
Yeah. So with the Founder Network, we started talking about our podcast pretty much as soon as the Founder Network launched as a way of going about it. So we sort of knew why we wanted to do it. We wanted to engage the wider entrepreneurial community. We wanted to inspire particularly our members, but everyone around it as well. So for us, there's a very clear scope. So for those with that already in mind, how do they go about really defining their audience and then how to find them?
So one of the first things, in fact, episode 1, lesson 1 of our course is starting with why. And some say, oh, it's like Simon Sinek, Marcus Aurelius, Aristotle, Seneca, everyone kind of starts with this basic concept. And one of your speakers, the B Company, or Soap Co., talks about this as well. What's the why? What's the thing that gets you up in the morning? And you've got a great episode coming up with Kuba from Eve Mattresses talking about the same thing. So we start with that. So the why might be exactly like you said, inspiring our audience members, bringing together our founders, creating value through network. Okay, so now you've got your why. The second piece is understanding who those people are. What magazines do they read? When do you think they'll be consuming your podcast? Do you think they'll be doing it in the car? Are they mostly drivers? Are they living in places where they have to drive? Are they actually in trains, tubes, buses, public transport? What is that going to be like? Well, if we're thinking in a car, then sound production isn't that important because they're all by themselves in the car. Most of the time, it's not that noisy outside. If they're on a tube, bus, or train, then your sound quality needs to be excellent because you're in their ear and it needs to be clean. And we talk about that. And then we say, okay, and then remember what the Americans say, which we've learned a lot from. My partner, Brett Farmer in the US, always says this: niches to riches. Niches to riches doesn't work in the UK. But understand your target market down to the finest point. My mentor, who started me on my podcast journey, is one of the godfathers of podcasting, John Lee Dumas. And John says, really understand your avatar, whether that is Jim, and Jim takes 27 minutes to get to work in the morning, and he's got 27 minutes coming home every night. So that's 2 episodes he has the opportunity of listening to, because the golden ratio says your podcast should be between 15 and 28 minutes. And in that, it needs to be entertaining, number 1, and educational, number 2. And I know that John is probably thinking, I don't want to be doing this job. I don't want to be driving to my office. I don't want to be driving home. I don't want to be away from my kids.
Yeah.
I want to start a business. I want to be an entrepreneur. I keep seeing these people do well. If only I knew how. Well, the show I'm listening to will tell me the exact steps I need to take by answering 8 formatted questions, or a conversation like we have, which handles a particular problem held by my avatar, Jim. And we talk about that. We say, understand exactly who it is you're helping. For you, whether it's a 0 to scale, or if it's a scale up, from startup to enterprise, you need to understand that so well that when you have your breakfast meetings, your masterclasses, you start picking up on the formula. Well, everyone starts talking about where do they identify products, how do they do A/B testing. Then they suddenly worry about client acquisition.
Yep.
Then they worry about brand awareness. Then they worry about funding. And you can go, great, now I know my series of questions that if I get them answered by the right people, provides the education portion of my show. And I think that people miss that. They think it's like starting a blog. I'll just start writing. I'll just start speaking. I talk to people all the time. And the next thing they forget is storytelling. I can be the greatest, I can be Stephen King, right? Fantastic writer, global acclaim. But I'm not going to have Stephen King read me bedtime stories to my 5-year-old, because he's not the right storyteller to a 5-year-old. I'd rather get someone from Peppa Pig to come in and do a 5-year-old story. So telling the story that the audience wants to hear in the voice they want to hear it in a way that works for who they are. And that's a problem that we have with people saying, well, I'll film it and I'll strip the audio and I'll put it into a podcast. Okay, that's great.
Which is what I wanted to do.
Which is what you want to do. It's what most people want to do. I think they're doubling up on opportunity. But it's a different way of doing it. In a podcast, you need at least a 3-part story. A beginning, which is what's known as the origin story. Who are you? Where did you come from? Tell us about your struggle. Followed into what's called the Epiphany Bridge. When was your aha moment?
Yep.
I was in Channel 4, I was just getting through, I was loving my work, but there wasn't anything that could really blow me up. My cousin calls me up, tells me about Eve mattresses, my wife's listening in the kitchen, she says, quit everything, jump on it, the audience gets excited, there's the aha moment, you've got your middle piece of the story, you go straight into, then what happened, the vehicle was, mattress jumped in, and within 2 years we were stock market led. Great, now tell us about the downfall of that. Because everyone listening going, he's a lucky man. That doesn't happen to me.
So I've got a slight argument with this.
Please.
So, just from the few episodes we've done, that you get really charismatic people that are great storytellers, have something valuable to say, they're the ideal. Right?
Yes.
But then you also get people, and it's the same with our speakers actually at events, where we don't always go for people that are the best speakers, the most charismatic, but what they say is absolute gold. So how do you balance that on podcast?
By being a good, what's the right word? I'm going to say a good networker. My friend Simon Burton, who organizes awards for a living and will be on the show, often says that he's a great networker because when he introduces 2 people, he doesn't go, Mike, this is James, Mike, and walks off. He goes, this is James as the founding network. James, Mike is important to you because he's a startup. Right. He's just hit 1 million. So it's that connection. With a podcast, you've got to be able to stop your guest and go, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Take me to that moment where sex tech became something important to you. You're talking about the internal and the external and all this, and it's amazing. I'm sure our science listeners are geeking out right now. But for me, who's not in that world, who's maybe a little bit of a, not a libertarian and a bit conservative, tell me more about the business of what you're doing. And that's your job. And then when he says something amazing, it's your job to stop it and go, can I just remind the listeners of what the value nugget was there? Or what John calls the value bomb, or what someone else might say the point of understanding is, which is what we just learned right now is the power of network. When he's talking about who he met and how that started up his business. When Kuba talks about Channel 4 being his first major investor, that's
and the passion that's there.
Yes, exactly.
He loves it.
He loves it, but you could immediately stop and go, okay guys, what do we take from this? We take that network equals net worth. That's your first value bomb. If he didn't have Channel 4, he wouldn't have had the big jump. He keeps talking, someone else keeps talking, it gets a bit boring or it goes long. It's your job to stop it again and go, great.
Right.
What's the nugget? Ask them, what's the nugget we can take out of it? What can I listen to right now, on the tube, on the bus, on the walk, in the gym? while looking after the kids, what can they take away from that?
Right, let's do that right now.
Go for it.
So, I feel like we've covered a lot there in 30 odd seconds. So, from the beginning, setting that avatar, you would have thought the audience of the TFN podcast, most of them are doing it on the back of a business or to help promote a business.
Yeah.
So, that legwork should have been done,
100%.
or a big part of it. So, that's all good. When it comes round to then finding the bits of value that they're looking to bring and how to do that, they'll all have different avenues. I'm guessing that depends massively on sector. So for us, for the Founder Network, we can cheat a little bit by just paying extra attention at our events and see what questions people are asking.
100%.
Good, let's do an episode on that.
Yeah.
How do you do that if you're selling dog food?
I think it's a two-way street on this. I think the first is telling the guest what's expected of them. So they say, let's give an good example. Jason Maskell from the CBD community. So Jason, we'd love to get you on the TFN podcast. Let me just tell you what our audience expects. We need a strong origin story that tells you about where you came from. We need an incredible aha moment where everything changed for you. We then need to know what the toughest part was. All the things you were learning through your meetings and go, this is actually what they care about. Now, I've got to warn you, our audience hasn't got much time. They're cash poor, time poorer, and they're on a hustle. So I might have to stop you in between. If I could tell you to prepare at least 3 TFN, 3 letters, 3 things of importance that our guests and listeners can take away from the podcast. Have all that prepared.
So I haven't been doing that.
And I'm aware of this. But that's what you need.
Uh-huh.
And that goes out to the email that's before they come on. It says, by the way, as well, I own all media rights to this interview.
Yep.
I own the right to turn it into transcription into my first book into my first intro video. So everything's on that page. And when they arrive...
And that's just to protect yourself.
That protects you from everything. Right. Otherwise, you could have someone come in and go, you know what, you did a great interview, but I don't want you to use it. And I don't want you to make money off it outside of the podcast. And you're like, well... I own it. It's my time. It's my space.
Yeah.
But prep. People love TEDx talks. And I always say, why do you think you love it? And they go, oh, it's the speaker. It's not the speaker. It's the prep. They do a day of prep, minimum, to go stay in the red circle. You're only supposed to move like this. People who move their hands have a higher conversion rate than those that don't move their hands. They go through these pieces. And yet, as podcasters, we don't do the preempt.
Yep.
We don't say, this is what needs to be done, no matter what.
So you think those so back to, if I know someone has the best knowledge in whatever sector.
Yes.
We want them, but we just know they're not a presenter. We know they're quite introverted.
Absolutely.
You think doing that helps prep them a little bit? And
takes their nerves away.
Okay.
Dale Carnegie, one of the greatest talkers and sales marketing people in the history of the world, said the difference between a horse that's scared of a train and a horse that isn't is the horse that isn't probably grew up near a train. Right? Exposure takes away fear. And if you can expose the person, the guest, to knowing what's going to be asked, what's expected of them, and literally feed it to them. Be like, Shah Wasserman, can't wait to have you on. What I'm going to ask you about is how you started your business. I'm going to ask you about your events, where you're going next.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you about your biggest hurdle. And then I want you to give some stuff to our listeners. Because the Founding Network's all about giving back to this community. And then if she goes, well, I haven't got anything right now, I just want to push my book, you can go,
it's no good
it's not going to work for us.
Right.
You know, that's one way, and our whole business is about reciprocity. It's about giving and getting. So what can you give us? And that's something I think that you will see on the show. You're going to see more and more people being like, we'll give away a mentorship program if you join the Founding Network. What an amazing opportunity to be mentored.
You realise now you're a guest, you're going to have to do this.
I was thinking that as I said it. I was like, oh, shit.
I just realised that.
Yes.
So for those that are unaware, and I'm guessing if we launch this early, you won't be, as a way of promotion, we are asking that each of our guests becomes a mentor at least for an hour. And all you have to do is basically share the episode and one learning from the episode.
Perfect.
There will be plenty of learning. So
yes, there will.
If you would like Jason for an hour, can we get you for an hour?
I'll do an hour. Happily, I'll do a couple of calls.
Then there you go. So all you have to do, share this episode, share one bite-sized learning, and why people should listen to it, and could be spending an hour with this man.
And I'll help you right now. Like, as we started the show, I've mentioned things like your network is your net worth, the power of networking. I've mentioned it's easier to fight for ears than eyes, an obvious one because I'm in the world of voice and podcast. The importance of sharing your message through your voice. So there's already 3 learnings that we've had just starting the show.
Part of me feels like being mean, and so it has to be from now. You can use those 3.
Use it, it'll be more. I promise there'll be more.
So talk to me a bit about, and I went through this, so when you decide, right, I'm going to launch a podcast. I'm going to put my name out there. And at one of our first events, you actually spoke about this as a speaker, about what it's like when you decide, I'm going to start my personal brand and putting yourself out there. So tell me, you mentioned it on the night, but talk about the positives and negatives of doing that.
It's funny, I get asked a lot to speak about personal branding, and in the beginning I was such a component and believer in it. It's helped me tremendously, to go from t-shirts to swimming school to health and fitness to events to aesthetic medicine to freaking podcasts. And it was just my personal brand, like my followers and fans, and the fact that I believe that leaders create leaders. So it's my job to help everyone that is around me. That's helped me over and over and over, this law of reciprocity. But then it turns around. It turns around when you become older, when you no longer want to be recognized. When for me, I wear a hat and I wear no socks. If I don't want to be noticed, I'll just walk around without a hat. And other people come up to me and go, "You look a bit like Jason Allan Scott," and I'll go, "I am."
Never heard.
Yeah, never heard of it. I should actually say, I've never said that. I should just go, no, it's probably not important. But in the events community, that was my brand, right? That was my personal brand, and it works. It works if you're changing. And in today's world, we have a minimum of 3 careers. The average person is a backslash. You're a model, /influencer, /entrepreneur, /speaker, /author.
As your business.
Exactly. And your business should have multiple revenue streams and multiple opportunities of income creation. But the problem with personal branding is that it's always you, and that can be very difficult and very dangerous, and it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
Because there's a consistency in brand work that is easy if it's external and very difficult if it's internal. Because what that is asking for is that consistency day in and day out. That's always on brand, as they say, which means it equals the same thing. And as humans, we don't. My brand could be all about being on social media and about creating content, valuable content that can be shareable. And then all of a sudden I stop. People go, well, you're no longer with your brand. Whereas Coca-Cola will always taste like Coca-Cola, no matter what the CEO is doing. And that is the danger of personal brand. Which is why Batman always talks about the cowl. It's not about Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne will pass, the next person will go into the cowl, the next person will be Batman. Batman is a brand. And I think that's the best way to look at it. If you think you can always be Bruce Wayne, really think about that. Think about rather something that you can put on. It can be a suit, it can be a hat, it can be just something that you can say it's separate. When it's off, it's no longer me, I'm off. And now I'm on something else.
And how easy, obviously in today's age, everything is so instant with social. So how easy is it to build, but then jeopardize?
Takes 5 years of working, takes 5 minutes to destroy it, thanks to social
And have you seen that?
Over and over and over again. I have seen someone I can't talk about, but was really sort of growing in the event space very quickly. A fantastic woman, actually I was a big fan of her work. Used the power of that stage was vlogging. Vlogging was coming up really big. And YouTube back then didn't need high production values. You could literally come in almost with your phone and film something and put it on and still get viewership based on viewing Ponzi, which is, you scrape audience members from other people constantly until you have your own audience. And then just said some really inappropriate things about certain members of people of the influence community. And all of a sudden couldn't get into an event, just got bullied, sadly. She unfortunately had bullied them in her verbal words, and they had bullied her by their actions of you can't come into the event. And she apologized. It was off cuff, it didn't mean it, but she was constantly vlogging, she was constantly filming herself, so she was putting it out. And we've seen that even with brand work, like Cristal famously coming out of a club and saying the biggest problem, and I'm paraphrasing, with my champagne is how many African Americans drink it. And Jay-Z been like, drop Cristal. Then make a song literally the same day. Called I used to support gold labels, then I found out that mofo was racist. Now I support Spades. And he jumped onto Ace of Spades. And at the time, my friend Barry Halstead was working for Ace of Spades, Armando Brignac. And he said, Jason, we had no idea he was going to be an ambassador. He literally, social media came out, he said this racist remark. Jay-Z was like, I will not be behind that. I'm going to jump over this brand. I love the brand. I love what they're doing. That's it. And we exploded in that moment. And Jay-Z ended up buying that champagne company. Took over the whole business. Those guys now do an incredible sparkling wine called Ballet. Free shout out to Ballet Rosé and the rest of the group. But the speed of social media to change lives, to turn things around, is phenomenal. And if you're a personal brand, we're seeing it now with Justin Timberlake. A bunch of photos just came out. His hands on a woman's got her hand on his knee. And that's it. All that building, all that reputation building, all that, I'm now a family man, I've got a young boy, I'm happily married to my wife, and da-da-da-da, gone in a second.
So I'm jumping around a bit here.
Please.
But that sparked me on something. So when you're talking about Justin Timberlake in the papers today, that may not be relevant by the time this comes out. So immediately I perked up to that.
Clever.
Thinking, should we be saying that? So how much does that matter?
It doesn't. Certain people are always going to be, I'd say, relevant, and tomorrow Justin could disappear off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
But there'll be relevance in his reputation, that ownership. So it's same as Cristal doesn't have the power now it had 5 years ago. So when I was in clubs, which is 5-6 years ago now, Cristal was our number one selling champagne, no question.
Yep.
Whereas I have friends now where I'll say, should we get a bottle of Cristal? And they don't know. In fact, a friend of mine calls it who. Whenever I say something that they've never heard of, they're like, who? Because it's gone now. It doesn't have that power anymore. Juicy Couture. You know, when I grew up, just Couture Velour tracksuits was like the thing. Every woman I knew wanted a Velour tracksuit. I had friends, I have no idea what that is. Yeah. But there are certain names, Prince, Justin Timberlake, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, that still have 2 years from now, 3 years from now, have what we now would consider Googleability versus a standing ownership of.
What about a smaller story then? Say I saw something in the news, thought it'd be worth mentioning in this conversation. Is that something you should steer away from?
Goes back to question 1, episode 1, lesson 1. Who's your avatar?
Right.
If your avatar is someone that reads the Metro, if your avatar is someone that goes to Daily Mail, page 6, and always wants to know about celebrities, dropping celebrity conversations into every conversation will make them excited.
Or for us, about founders.
Correct, entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I had a show called The Guesters Podcast. It ran 5 seasons, exactly 100 episodes, no accident. I had a formula. Did incredibly well. It's still my best ever show. And we spoke to entrepreneurs, and then we learned it was mostly one-preneurs. It was people that wanted to start businesses. It wasn't people that were already in businesses. So when I was talking to guys about growing and we were losing downloads massively. I couldn't understand why. Then we started talking to people about what would you do if you started a business tomorrow?
And does that matter though? So in my mind, so I'm in 2 minds actually, to be transparent about it. Part of me is like, I really want to target who are the ideal members for the Founder Network.
Perfect.
So well-established, high-growth founders. But then at the same time, I'm really keen that we engage the wider network of entrepreneurs, and then that'd be great for our listening numbers. Does that matter? Is it quality or quantity?
Matters massively. Okay. What you've got to remember is the first law of advertising, which is if you're trying to serve all, you serve none.
Yeah.
We were talking recently about numbers in podcasting, what's considered a success.
Yeah.
And I was yesterday in a fantastic meeting with someone who's a massive YouTube influencer. And I said, what is a good number in YouTube? And she said, at the moment, you need to kind of break 6 figures for you to be even considered a YouTuber, as far as she's concerned. But she said, that's not the shocking part. The shocking part is if you are listened to for more than 5 minutes, it's considered a successful clip. Yeah. And I thought, wow, because in podcasting, 80% of all clips, no matter the duration, some shows go up to an hour, are finished. Right. 80%. So, okay, so I look at that, and then I go, well, how important is it for me to get everyone? I'm never going to get everyone. There isn't a single show. My dad wrote a porno. It was one of the greatest selling podcast shows in history. 8 million at its highest. I've got friends who will never listen to that show. Untitled alone will never, ever have that on their playlist. But my dad wrote a porno care. It's not their audience. It's not who they want to talk to.
Yeah.
Russell Brand doesn't want to talk to people who are against spiritualism. That's not his audience.
Yep.
He's always going to mention spiritualism. That's who he talks to. So I think if you decide who you're serving, if you agree that your master is the audience member, and you know exactly that audience member, their frustrations, their problems, and you just try and solve that, you're always going to be okay. Because the power of 1,000, there's a whole article about it by the editor of Wired. You are better to have 1,000 dedicated fans than 1 million people that could not care less.
Yep. Makes sense. So you're on board, you've decided you're going to build a personal brand.
Yes.
You figured out your avatar.
Well, good steps. Figure out your why.
Figured out your why.
You're not going to quit.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the next steps? Because at that point, the things that are, in my mind, in the way are, and you mentioned it, the tech that I need. I have no idea what tech I need. The editing of it, how to do that, the skills behind that. the basics of naming it and getting the imagery right and so on, and sound quality. So what order should you tackle these in?
So if you're going to start with personal brand, if that's your plan, then write up your brand values. What is it your brand's going to stand for? And again, always be looking at your audience member, right? Again, so your Russell brand, your brand, your personal brand is Russell Brand. That's who you are. Appropriate surname. And you're like, well, it's going to be spirituality, it's going to be freedom, it's going to be libertarianism. 3 things. Mm-hmm. Every great brand has 3 core values. Everyone can remember 3. Power of 3. And then you go, great. Now that 3, how does that transplant to my podcast? Well, if I'm Russell Brand, I'm going to be okay with the Russell Brand Show because they know my name, they were Google my name, suitability. But if not, I'm better off being spirituality, libertarianism, and whatever podcast. So when they're looking up those 3 things, there's an immediate link. Then if I make my show around these 3 things, that works well. Okay, great. Now I've got the first chunk that I need. Next chunk, imagery. Well, go when in doubt, look about. Go to iTunes News and Noteworthy. Look at all those things have in common. Probably they'll have a picture on it looking directly at the person in a color that's bright and brand aware. So great, now I've got that. Now we're going to have to do production. Production is so important in podcasting because unlike YouTube and all those other things, there's no distraction from my listening ability.
Right.
So if your sound quality goes, I can't hear the guest, your questions bore me, it goes on for too long, how does that work? Okay, so let's talk about formats. Before we even get to editing, I want 15-minute shows, I want 5 questions, I want it always to start with this, I want it always to end with this, and I want a strong call to action so I can test the difference between a follower and a fan. My call to action is go to my website. My call to action is go to my guest website. My call to action is anything that makes them move. Because with podcasting, another benefit, they can listen, get up their phone, and do it at the same time.
Yep.
So you do that. Now you're in tech world. Things happen while we're talking. There's noise, everything's going crazy. Work out, and you should have done this right in the start, but I mentioned it because it's important before you go into production. What is your time worth? If you're on a 40K salary, your time is worth 150 quid a day. So we have an 8-hour work day, 8 divided by 150, that's how much it costs me per hour. If a podcast is going to take me an hour to get there, an hour to do the show, an hour to get back, I've lost 3 hours, what's that worth? How much does an editor cost me to send it to them? They do everything, plus they put it on the website, plus if I want they can do transcription, plus they'll do show notes, plus they'll do every single thing.
Yep.
Maybe it costs me 400 or 500 a month. Well worth it. And all I have to worry about is storytelling, call to action, and how to make money out of my show.
Right, so particularly around the editing and those sides of things, it's about outsourcing it to someone like yourself.
100%. Yeah, or anyone. Yeah, just make sure they got a good record, make sure that you have a 15-minute call with them before, minimum, so you can explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, what success looks like. Because at the end of your first season, you want to be able to talk to your producer or your show caller and say, it was a failure. And for them to go, really? Because I've just looked at your success metrics. Your success metrics was you wanted to get 20 people on the show that became members of the Family Network. How many did you sign up? And you go, wow, 17. So then it's success. Oh, but we only had 50 listeners. And out of that, you hit your metric. Well, okay, so I'm signing up a lot of guests. Great. But if you turn around and say, well, all I want is subscribers to the podcast, but how many listeners did we get? And I go, no. That's what your showrunner needs to be doing all the time, is reminding you of the success metric. Because when you're in it, it's very easy to be like, I'll do a podcast with my friend Mike, where's a plumber down the road, and I'll do one while I'm at a birthday party, or I'll do whatever it is. And you forget your avatar, you forget your success metric, you forget all the things that made you want to start the podcast to begin with.
Yeah. And what, I suppose, basic technology, the bare minimum technology do you need to record the podcast?
A good microphone, a good editing software. I say to everyone, start on a interview-style podcast. The simplest. Everyone's had a conversation. Yeah. Do it through Skype, which is a voice-over internet protocol software, so VoIP. It's built for this kind of thing. Yes, Zoom can do it. I don't believe it's as good. We've not seen it as good results. Mm-hmm. Some people love it, especially in the US. I've got much more Zoom users than Skype users. Get something called Ecamm. It's $45 for the year. It records the voice on their side. Before it gets messed up, come into my side. It records my voice on my side, 2 beautiful lines of sound. Click both, save it to your desktop, go to WeTransfer, which is free, send that to a producer, give them some notes. I really liked when the client said this. I really liked when my guest said this. I really liked it when I got this testimonial. In 4 minutes and 37 seconds, I say 12 times. Can you remove that? And if you've got a good enough editor, so our team, for example, to blow our own trumpet, You don't have to say that. Send it to us. We will listen to the whole thing and take out all the parts that slowed it down. We know what a good rhythm is. We know how long does this one go before cutting them down. And sends it back to you and says, you're good to go.
So you mentioned Zoom and Skype. So we went back and forth on this a couple of times. I say always, I've done 5 of these. I always prefer doing them in person. I just feel like it's more natural. Chemistry. You can pick up on body language and so on. Very rare, if there's some high-profile, busy people, they may only be able to do a quick Skype, which is fine. What are the pros and cons of Skype in person?
In person, some people in person is fantastic because they're charismatic and they get off well on body language and they're picking up different things and you want that, and then you just need to get a test cam or as HC or as there's one called I've forgotten the name of it. I have to look it up, but it's like H something, and it's a little square thing, and we've got one lying around. And you put it on between the two of you, or you can link it up to 2 lapel mics like we're doing today, or you can simply have 2 handheld mics, which you can click into, for example, a test cam. You get the mics for next to nothing. The Audica is my favorite.
To spend 70 quid on a mic, something like that.
So you can spend exactly 70 quid for 2 mics, which is really good. You can spend another $100 for your test cam and a memory card. $20. Whole thing costs you about 150 quid, and you've got all the equipment you're going to need to get a good enough podcast out to start testing the market and making something.
My point being, you can get up and running fairly quickly without massive investment to give it a go for a season. Commit to 10 episodes or whatever. See the results.
I think what's important as well, and you've said it beautifully, so I think it segues nicely. People always ask me, why do all your shows and all your client shows are in seasons? And I say, because there's something special about a season. You can test an idea. You can test your avatar. And when you change completely, it's not weird to the guest your listener, because they're going, season 2, he's changed the whole format.
And what's the ideal number of episodes in this
11.
season? Why?
Statistics. Libsyn is probably our biggest statistic giver outside of iTunes. iTunes only gives us stats, I don't know if people know this, from iOS 11 up. So anything that isn't iOS 11 up, we don't even know the stats. So people can listen to this on their car, in their Alexa, their Google Home. We do not get stats on that. We only get on iOS 11 up on Apple. Libsyn gives us a much bigger sort of view, but not as many people listening, because iTunes gives us the most. And they seem to tell us the stats that we use over and over again. And that is 11 episodes for a season is incredibly popular, as is 22, weirdly enough. Very similar to HBO's 22 episodes for a long-running show, versus 11 for a new show to test concept and run. And we know that 28 minutes or 15 to 28 minutes is the perfect number. People go, it's too short. Then break it up. Have them binge listen. But have a show that fits that time construct.
And is that something you should keep an eye on? Or so like now, sitting in front of you, I would feel rude if I'm looking at my watch all the time.
Cut it up. Have your editor cut it up. Give yourself opportunity to be like, question 1's going to be this, question 2's going to be this, question 3, or like we're having a conversation, I'll be like, what we want to do with this episode is break it up into 3 parts. So I was on a show called Mind Pumps, the biggest show in health and fitness in the world. It's grown massively. They're a 7-figure business. In the beginning, they were like, shit, Jason, we had a conversation for 2.5 hours. Our shows aren't that long. We're not Joe Rogan. And they just cut the episode up and then got traction. And they're like, wow, okay, well, that's an obvious one. Just create multiple mini episodes. Or maybe you want to do a whole season answering one question. What was your aha moment? And you take all the other episodes you've already had, and you've got a whole nother season.
Well, one thing I've got in mind, and I don't know if this is right to do, so we've got Giuseppe behind the camera filming this thing.
Phenomenal job by Giuseppe, big shout out.
So, is to record this, have this as the podcast, have the video if people want to watch it, but then to cut up the little segments.
100%.
Use it as promotion for Instagram.
So what you can use it for Instagram, use it for Facebook, use it for YouTube, use it for LinkedIn. LinkedIn has incredibly high conversion rates at the moment when this is going out. But keep linking it back to your podcast. To get the full episode, go to our podcast now on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you find good oral content. The Founding Network podcast. And you just keep dropping that into every single thing you do. It's your call to action. And as you heard today by one of your founders, it takes 7 touch points to get a sale. So same as 7 touch points to get a call, to move someone. So keep dropping it in. Keep doing that message. The great thing about a podcast is you can do sound files, quote cards. You can cut that piece up so many different ways. As you can your events. You can do 190 days of the content from one event if you know how to run it through.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about guest management as well.
It's tough.
I get you on. You are going to be one of my 11 episodes. You turn up and you just don't deliver.
Happens all the time.
No value in it. So in terms of, and again, you don't want to break any relationships, but if you're saying we want an hour of your time, which is valuable, they've got business to run, we record it and I'm like, actually, I don't want to use this episode. I don't want to burn one of 10 on this.
Correct. So I've done that multiple times, and I've also done the opposite. I have made the foolish mistake. There's 3 episodes in the Guesses podcast that are absolutely awful, and I hated putting them out there.
So you went through with those out.
Now, I did that in season 3 of the Guesses podcast. If you look at any of my other shows, it doesn't exist. Stop doing it. Because I would do the show and then I'd say, it's coming out the next season. I'm going to try and put it in the next season. Didn't put it in the next season. It was terrible. I couldn't put it out. What we ended up doing with 2 of the, I think, 7 guests that we actually never ever have put out their episodes, is we've said to them, we're going to take one question out that you did really well.
Yeah.
The show's great, but we've really recently learned what our audience wants, and it's not what I did. I did a bad job as a host. Take responsibility. It is your responsibility to go. I didn't ask you enough about entrepreneurship. I didn't ask you enough about the hustle. I didn't ask you enough about charity and fundraising, and that's what our audience wants. Where I asked you a lot about.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. So I guess, as you're saying, if you see a potential guest, you see the value in them coming on the show and they're very worthwhile.
Yeah.
Is then the host's job to make that happen.
The host is the farmer, and it's the host's job as a farmer to work out what needs to be picked to go from farm to plate, from farm to fork. Better analogy. So you should be talking to your produce and working out what to take out of them that's going to make a great meal. It's not their job. They're just there going, we're produce. I'm going to tell you about every single piece of produce. And most entrepreneurs are like tech people, or better known as geek shit, which they just want to tell you about the fun parts of what they do. They want to drum their product.
Which are not always the fun parts to everyone else.
Absolutely.
Right.
So your job is to take out the parts that you know make the dish that you came in prepared for. You came in to make macaroni and cheese, and no matter how much tells you about his beef ragu, you bring it back to macaroni and cheese. And that's the answer. You keep going back to your avatar. That's what I said to everyone. Start with an avatar. If you don't know who you're serving, you can't serve them with the correct pieces that you need.
So that takes me back to when we did the social media masterclass with yourself, Media, Football Manager.
Which was fantastic.
Allan from Football Manager nailed it, and I think we really related to it. And he was saying his audience at Football Manager are all football geeks, not fans, geeks. They want all the facts. They don't want to know that Man City is a great team. They want to know exactly why they're a great team and what they do differently. And that really resonated with me. I was like, our members and our audience are business geeks.
100%.
Like myself and those involved just love it. So I think that for us, that's what we have to keep reminding ourselves. And
Allan said another thing I should never forget. He said, if you look at our first covers of our games, there had a guy like screaming with a tie on or whatever, and then we changed it to be the point of view coming into a stadium. And he's like, people went mad. And I thought, there again is your example, right? There again, you're going, what do the audience want? Not what we think they want. What do they actually want? And with seasons, let's bring it back a step, you can test that. In this season, we're just going to be talking to founders about this. And the next season, well, let's look at the figures. Oh, it's not as high as we thought they would be. What's the engagement? We didn't get as many call to actions as we thought we were going to be. We didn't get as much. Okay, what's success metrics? We didn't get enough people signed up as members. Okay, so let's change it. Now let's look at the notes that you've taken from all the events you've done, and let's do a whole season just answering 6 questions about funding, scaling, network, my events, the power of events, power of award shows, and let's just do it about that. And let's end the show, end the season, so it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, with an award show.
And what does the end of a season look like? Do you have a gap before the next season, like they do in TV?
So you can, you can have a full season break. You can have a year break. I've had it. My shortest break probably is with Not Another Crypto Show, which was bought, became Pink Tank, and I want to say that was 2 weeks.
Right.
We literally finished. We did an episode going, "Hi, this is the new owners of the show. This is Seth. This is Mark Little, and the new opportunity is this. The new season is going to be about tech for good. Where with me, it's just about learning about tech and what you've already found. If that's something that's going to grab you, definitely stick around for season 2. Now, we've just completed season 2. This is the last month of season 2 for the guests. There'll be probably a 3-week break. And then February 2020, they'll start all about a very different sort of conversation about what they're doing. And it's all going to be about education. What does the average person know about technology? How can we educate them? So that's a short break in TV world. There's nothing that's that short where you go from episode 1, season 1, season 2. Because you want to test, promote, you want to drive traffic. There's all kinds of things around it. It's about you. It's about your success metric. Is it just about being known? Is it about being a household name to your audience member? The biggest show in the world is Friends, which is mind-boggling. Before that, it was Seinfeld. And and to this day, no one has beat it. How come?
You told me the answer to this, so I feel like it's cheated.
Please.
Isn't it because it's always the same setup and they're very clear with what episode is the one where
the title tells you
X,
correct.
Right?
The title tells you exactly what to expect before you sit down and watch. It's exactly formulated. It's always going to be the exact same formula. It's always going to have a beginning and a middle and end. It's always going to have a point of friction somewhere in the middle. It's always going to be resolved beautifully at the end that makes you feel good about yourself. That works. That works on every medium because it's the form of storytelling, what's also known as the hero's journey that everyone's been doing since the beginning of time. That's what we know. The other reason no show will ever be as big, even though we can copy that exact formula, is we have much more content than we had back when Friends was on. And we had to wait a week to get Friends. So that build-up of the next week Tuesday, or Seinfeld, next week Thursday, it's gone. I can sit down now. I've still haven't watched Friends, and I can watch every single episode.
Watch Friends?
Never. My friends go mad about this every year. They're like, Christmas is coming. You gonna watch Friends? I'm like, still I haven't watched Friends. Too late now. I can't go back. Plus, a friend of mine keeps telling me it's not woke. She's like, it's very joke. You can't watch it. I'm not gonna watch it. The idea of that, I think, is you now know the competition landscape. So don't try and be Friends. Don't try and be Seinfeld. You're not going to be Seinfeld or Friends. There's probably never going to be another Facebook. What can you do in your market that's going to change lives, be of value, be entertaining and educational, and stick with that?
Right. So there's two more points I want to touch on.
Please.
So you've got your incredible podcast. You're fully in it, fully invested. How do you get it out there? How do you get it onto iTunes, Spotify, wherever else it needs to be?
They are all, they're not all easy. Spotify particularly is very difficult. And not difficult in their application. The application is pretty simple. It's an RSS feed. It's a couple of things you got to tick and block. But it's really about your episode 000 for your first season, which is the episode they mostly listen to, which is kind of a what to expect, what's to come up. They listen to audio production. They listen to how clear you can make your case. And often they'll listen to like a jingle in the beginning or a call to action at the end. They just want a quick, so it can be 8 minutes or it can be 11 minutes, quick episode trailer of what's to come in the season to go. The better that is, we've seen the faster we get a response ratio. But it's not difficult. They've all made it as easy as possible to do it. You go onto a hosting platform like Libsyn, you put everything in, they come up with the RSS feed. You own, another great thing about podcasting versus YouTube, is you still own that medium. You're just using these platforms to distribute. If YouTube disappears tomorrow, all the stuff we did for Pink Tank is gone. It's all on YouTube. It's not on anything else. We don't save any of that. But our podcasts, we own all that content. We just use those platforms. So when iTunes disappeared, and it's now iTunes Podcast, iTunes Music, iTunes Movies, it doesn't affect us. If iTunes disappears tomorrow, it doesn't affect us. We take all that content and we just embed it into our website, embed it into something, Facebook, embed it into our LinkedIn, use it for other quote cards, use it for audio. We've got a million ways we can still skin that cat. And we don't have to go back to the drawing board and go, now what do we do? We've lost our brand because it's all based on YouTube.
Okay, so it's up there, it's out there. How do you promote it? So we're, for the TFM podcast, using our little trick of mentorship.
100%.
Are there other
giveaways
things we could be doing?
Giveaways are great, which is what you're doing with the mentorship program. Affiliates, have them give something like, if you listen to this now, you'll get a discount on Soap & Co. So go to Soap & Co right now. By having that people go...
We haven't agreed that yet.
Not yet, but you should definitely look into it. So what the listener will find out then, especially what we call the coupon listener, is can't wait to find out what my deal is next week. Oh my God, Eve Mattresses is doing 20% off. Hey guys in the office, you should listen to the Founding Network. Every single week when they drop an episode, they give something away. So there's mentorship that doesn't really affect me. I've got an office job. But they gave away soap, which is great, and it supports the people who are disabled and need more opportunities. Or the following week, they gave away plumbing through your plumbing contact, and a phone call number to speak directly to a specialist who comes in and fixes my heating. So that's another great one. You can also give away software. You could do a talk with someone in a software company, Run Friendly, and say, hey guys, for anyone listening right now, we're doing a free month with Run Friendly, where if you need a place to drop off your bicycle, have a quick shower, Run Friendly is going to give you an opportunity to go to any decathlon store and use this membership code. Wow, I wanted to do that. I'm a runner, I'm a cycler. The following week, I'm listening to Honeypot, and you talk about Honeypot's giving membership for 1 year, plus a free opportunity to come to one of our networking events where you can meet your future partner in real time, which is the whole benefit of Honeypots.
Yep.
So every week I have a reason
and
to
that's
listen.
for us, selfishly, that's a great way to show off our network and engage the people
100%.
that are part of them.
There's no reason why you can't be selfish in what you do. As long as you serve someone, as long as you add value to someone's life. There's nothing wrong with having your own situation fixed. The story of the Good Samaritan wouldn't work if the gentleman didn't have any money. If he was just giving everything away, it wouldn't have worked. But he'd obviously accumulated enough to give to someone who became the Good Samaritan. So it's a very clever idea. The other thing that you can do is what's called I don't know if it's really called this, the podcast Ponzi scheme. Which is, you bring on someone like the winner of Apprentice. You know he's got 500,000 followers. So you do the interview, you give him the link to share. It's a nice, quick, easy way to share it on Facebook, LinkedIn, all the different mediums. He shares it out, and out of 500,000, you skim off 10%. You've now got 5,000 people who are listening to your podcast. And if you do a good throw forward, 25% of that will stick around to the next show. And you start gathering listeners from this old influencer marketing trick, which we use for over and over and over. It's another great way of doing it. Have live events. Empower your community to meet other community members. There are geeks of business, meet other geeks of business. Come to a founding network event, come to the awards, come to something else that we're doing. So there's another way of doing it. We actually, it's a membership that comes with the podcast company, which you're not unsurprisingly, so I'll send you a link. We have an entire Facebook page of other shows saying, come on our show and promote your show. And we can come on your show and promote your show. It's also part of our podcast, Ponzi. And you can talk about your product and your company, and that drives traffic both ways. And those are all the ways we do it. We also link to a big PR company that if you've got a good enough story, will send you opportunities to be in magazines, newspapers, which again will drive traffic. So some of it's old school thinking about media and print, some of it's new school thinking in about affiliate marketing and influencer marketing, and some of it's good old fashioned networking, which is I'm going to ask you personally, can you share this out with your audience members?
Makes sense. And am I right in thinking people can't see the number of listens?
Can't see the number of listeners, can't see the number of subscribers. Your hosting platform, you pay a certain fee based on how much information you want. The more you pay, the more data you can get.
Right. So my next question is actually irrelevant. I was going to say, is it worth directing people all to just iTunes or just Spotify? I guess that doesn't matter.
No. So again, in the old days, there's a lot of conversation about that. 60% of all listens come from iTunes. It's the biggest thing. Is that because people wanted to be on the news and noteworthy? And New and Noteworthy works. So the first 8 weeks of your podcast is out. If you can get a certain amount of 5-star reviews, and it's tiny, it's like 5, and your listenership jumps up incrementally in 8 weeks, they will freely promote you on their New and Noteworthy. That's awesome. It's a real badge of accomplishment. So people were driving to iTunes. iTunes was genius because it takes you away from Spotify. It takes you away from iHeartRadio at the time. It takes you away from all the other platforms. Is it that important now? No, because people listen on different devices. I've got friends that only listen through their Amazon Echo, only listen through their Netflix box, only listen through whatever. So it's not that important. I still think it's a badge of honor. I was very proud. I took a photograph the day I made News and Noteworthy. I didn't get to do it with my other 2 channels, I was really sad about. But we've since built up a bit of a cult following on Smarter Event Planning or Purely Women or any of the other shows that we do. But I felt like I've missed an opportunity because Apple is basically giving you a free platform to sell yourself, and that's a beautiful thing to get from a brand as big as Apple.
Makes sense. So we are just about out of time, but as of, I suppose, 3 key tips of how to get going with the podcast, what would you say?
When in doubt, look about. Find a podcast that you like.
I like that.
Find out what their formula is. Listen to the show and find the formula. There's always a formula. Maybe it's a strong intro, a hype band that says, on the next show, James, we'll talk to, da-da-da. If you listen to the Guestless podcast, I've got a hype band that goes, if entrepreneur expert, da-da-da, and hypes me up, puts you in a prime state. Listen to the formula of the actual show. Is there a beginning, a middle, and an end? How have they done that? Who do they have on the show? Because if they're on one show, they'll be on another show. Very rare. Notice that most of them have a product or service coming out, so they're using it as a promotional stream of thing, which means they want to be on your show. Cross-promote as much as possible. Go on to the people that you like, your competitors, even your competitors, even your peers, and be like, I love your podcast, I listen to this one, like their stuff, retweet it, re-Instagram it, make a comment so that they're aware of you, it's also known as the Dream 100, and then get them on your show. Look at who's sponsoring their show. Ask to sponsor your show. It's very simple. Have a clear sense or metric of what success looks like in your first season, whether you keep it in your second season or completely change it, but have one metric of success, one channel of focus, one particular point of view that you're going to be putting out into the world, and one type of message that you want to be heard. So when someone comes to you, they go, James, Founding Network. It's all about network and the power of network. And you go, that's all I wanted from my podcast. Everyone gets it in one line. Versus, your first season was a bit confusing. You had multiple people talk about multiple things. Second season was all about funding. Are you a funding person? No, we're a network. Well, why don't you talk about network more? Why are you always talking about funding? Shit, my message wasn't clear.
Yep.
It should have been clear from day one. This is what we're doing. This is who we're serving. This is why we're serving it. So that if you ask me about Kuba now and about Eve Mattresses, like probably tell you the whole story because he made it so clear. Ask me about Soap Co. So clear. I could do it backwards. You know, because they've made it so easy for me to reshare, also known as Seth Godin, the fungal method. One message, one thing, one. Seth is only on a blog. Why hasn't he done a podcast? Because he's a blog guy. One channel. My channel is blogging. I'm going to write a blog every single day. I'm going to get people on it, and that's it. I'm going to speak. Speak leads to the blog. Blog is all I want.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very, very and of course, reach out to us. Reach out to us.
How can people find you?
Jason at podcastsyndicator.com or Jason Allan Scott on Facebook or Jason Allan Scott on LinkedIn or Jason Allan Scott on Twitter. JASONALLANSCOTT. Pretty easy, sadly. Pretty Googleable. Wish I had not had that as well as it is now. And and of course reach out to the Founding Network. I'm at these events. I'm online. Easy to find.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.